You've been told your whole life that you need to relax, that you should be able to disconnect, that taking a real vacation is healthy, normal, essential. But what if the reason you can't stop thinking about work isn't a failure of discipline? It's because your brain literally doesn't recognize the difference between work and identity. What if rest, for you, feels more like abandonment than relief? There's a specific kind of person who ruins vacations. Not intentionally, not because they're workaholics in the traditional sense, but because even on a beach, even with their phone face down, their mind is still running scenarios, still solving problems, still feeling that low hum of incompleteness. You know who you are. You've tried the apps, you've set boundaries, you've told yourself this time will be different. And yet, 3 days into the trip, you're checking email at sunrise, not because your boss demanded it, but because not checking feels worse. I've noticed something about people like this. They're not escaping work, they're escaping the feeling of being cut off from the thing that makes them feel real. Here's what's happening in your brain. In 2019, researchers at the University of California studied what they called role-based identity fusion, the psychological merging of your sense of self with your professional role. They found that for certain people, work isn't something they do, it's something they are. When you engage with your work, your brain releases dopamine, not just because you're achieving something, but because you're confirming your identity. You're reinforcing the story you tell yourself about who you are. Competent, needed, valuable, solving things. But here's the twist. When you stop working, even for a vacation, your brain doesn't interpret that as rest. It interprets it as identity threat. The absence of that dopamine feedback loop doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like fading, like you're becoming less visible, less necessary, less you. A 2017 study from the Rotterdam School of Management found that high achievers reported more anxiety during the first 3 days of vacation than during a normal work week. Their cortisol levels actually spiked, not because they were stressed about work, but because they were stressed about not working. From my perspective, this isn't about poor boundaries. It's about a brain that has wired meaning and purpose directly into productivity. And when you remove productivity, the brain starts scanning for threats. There's an evolutionary angle here that most people miss. For tens of thousands of years, your value to the tribe was determined by your contribution. The hunter who stopped hunting became a burden. The gatherer who rested too long risked exile. Your brain still carries that wiring. It still equates contribution with survival. And work, in the modern world, is how you contribute. It's how you prove you belong. It's how you avoid the deeply primitive fear of being useless. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, doesn't just activate through hugs and friendships. It also activates through collaboration, through being needed, through the feeling that your effort matters to others. When you work, you're not just completing tasks. You're fulfilling a social contract that your brain interprets as safety. I've come to believe that people who can't turn off work aren't obsessed with success. They're obsessed with relevance. And in a world where your relevance is constantly measured, stopping feels like disappearing. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. If you define yourself by what you produce, then rest becomes existentially destabilizing. Because who are you when you're not producing anything? This is what psychologists call an achievement-based identity. It's not inherently bad. In fact, it's often what drives people to build extraordinary things. But it comes with a cost. The cost is that you can never fully relax, because relaxing means confronting the question, if I'm not working, what am I worth? A longitudinal study from Stanford in 2021 tracked professionals over 10 years and found that those with the strongest work identity fusion reported the highest levels of career satisfaction, but also the highest rates of burnout and relationship strain. They weren't lazy, they were operating from a different psychological blueprint. It seems to me that the real issue isn't that you work too much, it's that you haven't built an identity that exists independently of your output. And that's not something a vacation can fix. But here's the part most people won't tell you. This trait, this inability to disconnect, it's not a flaw. It's a feature of a specific kind of mind. A mind wired for depth, for responsibility, for the long game. People who can't turn off work are often the same people who see projects through, who notice what others miss, who carry the weight so others don't have to. You're not broken. You're just built for a different rhythm. The problem isn't that you think about work on vacation. The problem is that you've been told that's wrong, that you should be able to split yourself cleanly into work mode and life mode. But some brains don't split, they integrate, and integration, while exhausting, is also where some of the most meaningful work comes from. I've noticed that the people who struggle most with this are also the people I'd want on my team during a crisis. Because when things matter, they don't check out. They lean in. That's not a bug. That's wiring. So maybe the real question isn't how to stop thinking about work. Maybe it's how to build a life where work doesn't have to carry the entire weight of your identity, where your sense of meaning is distributed across multiple sources: relationships, creativity, growth, presence. Because the truth is, you'll probably never be the person who fully disconnects. And that's okay. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to stop apologizing for how your brain is wired. Your mind doesn't turn off because it's not supposed to. It's designed to solve, to build, to move forward. The trick isn't killing that drive, it's learning to aim it at things that fill you up instead of just keeping you busy. You're not addicted to work. You're addicted to feeling like you matter. And once you understand that, you can start building a life where mattering doesn't depend on never stopping. If this resonated, there's another pattern worth exploring. It's about why some people feel guilty when they're happy. I'll leave that one for next time, but if you've ever felt that, you already know what I'm talking about.